Hello and welcome to this Accounting Excellence webcast here from Accounting Web Studios in Bristol. I'm Tom Herbert, editor of the site, and this month we are talking making tax digital for VAT for small business clients. So there was no further delay announced in the budget or the finance bill to making tax digital, so it is full steam ahead for the government's digital tax ambitions. So over the next hour, we are going to be talking about how this affects accountants and their small business clients with 2 accountants and a small business client. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you also to Free Agent for supporting this webcast. Without further ado, let's meet the panel. So first is Michaela Rees, who is Director of Sterling Rees. Hi Michaela, thanks for joining us.
We run a small bespoke tax and accountancy practice in South Wales, and we've recently opened an office in Gibraltar as well.
My goodness, right, fantastic. Thank you for joining us, Michaela. And next, an accounting excellence veteran, Emily Cortman, who is Chief Accountant at Free Agent. Hi, Emily.
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for inviting me back. So I'm Free Agent's Chief Accountant, as you say, so I work quite closely with both the Free Agent support team when it comes to queries about tax and VAT and so forth, but I also do a bit of work with our compliance and product teams who've been working with HMRC as we've built our MTD functionality.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Emily.
My pleasure.
And a client of Michaela's, Harry Coleman, last but certainly not least, Director of Fabric. Hi, Harry.
Good morning, Tom. Fabric is an organisation that supports young children leaving care at the point where they're transitioning towards adulthood. And we've also got a linked charity, the Fabric Foundation, which focuses on the fun activities to make life a little bit better.
Brilliant. That sounds really great. Thank you for joining us, Harry. So, lots to talk about, but before we get cracking, there's a couple of housekeeping issues. If we go to the slides, all our sessions are available on demand, so you can watch them later. So if you're having any technical issues viewing the content, then you'll be able to download them or via the link that we will email you afterwards. So don't worry about that. If you have any technical questions, then please email hello@accountingexcellence.co.uk. Speaking of questions, if you have any questions for our panel, then you can use the chat window either to the side or below the video, depending on which browser you're using. This will come through to my trusty iPad here, and we'll try and answer as many questions as we can in our hour. If we miss any, then we will answer them as part of a post-event wrap-up afterwards on Accounting Web. So let's just run through the agenda quickly. On the slides here we have what we know so far about making tax digital. We'll take a look inside the pilot process that was recently opened up to 500,000 businesses. We'll be sharing experiences from early accounting practice pioneers. We'll be looking at gearing up small business clients for change and how accountants can do that, and we'll be answering some of the most frequently asked questions that ourselves at Accounting Web and Free Agent get on making tax digital. If there's time, we will answer your questions. So let's get started. MTD, the story so far. Emily, what do we know?
Well, what we know so far, Tom, is, as you quite rightly said, there were no changes in the budget, there were no changes in the finance bill, so we're going with what we knew before that. So, in other words, from the 1st of April next year, a business that is VAT registered because it has to be VAT registered, in other words, its turnover is above the VAT registration threshold it had to register for VAT, will no longer be able to file VAT returns through the government gateway. It'll have to be through the MTD portal instead. If a business is not VAT registered, it's not affected by MTD at this stage. If a business is voluntarily registered for VAT, then it can file through MTD, but it can opt to stay within the government gateway. But one key point to note is that once a business has started using MTD, it can't then go back and start using the government gateway. Once you've changed for good.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's interesting. If we take a look at the slides, there are a number of businesses. When the pilot was opened up, I think last month, there was also a little sneaky announcement down the bottom that we had to dig out that a small number of businesses, about 3.5%, with complex requirements, have a 6-month deferral and come into the regime in October 2019. These include deep breath. Trusts, not-for-profit organisations, VAT divisions, VAT groups, public sector entities such as government departments and NHS trusts, local authorities, public corporations, and those traders based overseas, and those required to make payments on account, and annual accounting scheme users. Goodness, all information on the slides. Digital records, Emily. Could you just give us a quick definition of what they actually are?
There's actually quite a broad definition of what digital records are, because of course in the early discussions about MTD everybody thought that spreadsheets and digital records were mutually exclusive. It now turns out they're not. So for example, yes, of course you can use a system such as FreeAgent to keep your records digitally and file to HMRC. You can keep your records on a spreadsheet and use bridging software to file to HMRC.
So this is software that pulls from the spreadsheet into HMRC's API.
That pulls electronically from the spreadsheet and then pushes electronically into HMRC's API.
Yeah.
But interestingly, if you've got information on one spreadsheet that you copy and paste into another, it seems that HMRC are happy with that. It seems that copy and paste is okay, but cut and paste isn't, which is slightly strange. I suppose it's all about sort of, is the actual link process digital? Michaela used a lovely phrase when we were talking about this before, digital audit trail. There needs to be a digital audit trail. But interestingly as well, if you work out something like journal adjustments for, say, partial exemption on a spreadsheet, and then you enter those into a piece of accounting software that can file digitally to HMRC, that's also okay. And again, that's because you've got the digital audit trail, you've got the calculations, but the journals have been created as an entry in your digital software.
Interesting. Michaela, as an accountant, how aware have you been of MTD and how this will affect your small business clients?
Well, our journey with MTD probably started at the Accountex exhibition probably in 2016, and from that exhibition we realised that we needed to have a large overhaul of all of our systems. So there were sort of two sides to what we did. We looked at our systems and we've managed to develop a paperless office. Everything that we do is very much focused around digital. We've got very secure systems for exchange of information with our clients, and we've had to look much further than we thought we were going to. We're now FreeAgent accredited experts in our office as well. It's software that we really enjoy using. We enjoy showing our clients how it works, how it can save them time and money. The fact that FreeAgent is MTD ready is fantastic for us and for our clients. And we've started educating our clients. So, you know, from the builder who may come in with all his receipts in a carrier bag, you know, right up into people who run several offices, maybe an insurance broker or something like that. And we have to take a very tailored approach with our clients. There's been a lot of discussion about accountants segmenting their clients to be able to create some systems in order to approach the elephant that MTD has sort of become, but actually what we've done is we've taken a different approach, and we've literally looked at the level of skill that each of our clients have. And surprisingly, some of the clients that you think who wouldn't grasp the concept and who would be reluctant to change, those with incredibly complex systems with huge computer software needs of their own, they're actually more willing to change at times, which is quite surprising.
It's interesting. Is that because of the sort of burdens put on them by these systems, do you think? That they were looking for a way out almost?
Possibly. I also think sometimes what we tend to do is we set the system up behind the scenes. So if it is somebody who's got very complex needs, we set it up for them. So we present them with a complete package which they can just continue running. Right. And that's a lot easier to deal with than to say to somebody, right, we don't have anything now, but we're going to have to do this and that and that. And there's this huge long list of steps that they need to go through. The more we can do to ease the burden, the better.
Yeah. Great. So obviously the part of this webcast is around sort of small business clients. Been kind enough to invite Harry along as a sort of small business client. How much did you know about Making Tax Digital before we started this journey?
Quite little, to be honest with you. I mean, one of the things that I find really fortunate about our accountancy practice is that they are very good at communicating things that are going to affect your business. Our business isn't VAT registered. We're exempt from it at present. However, obviously, at some point we will need to be, so we've got a massive lead in from our end. With, I think with any business, you need time to adjust, you need time to plan, to get things right, so it doesn't become that bit where you're panicking and you've got enough to do running a business, let alone having to do with something like Making Tax Digital. And terms like tax and digital to people who don't work in finance can be a little bit scary. It can also put you off, and you may think that there's more to it. So yes, it's the communication, but obviously we've seen a lot of things that are happening. So Sterling Reese have been doing a lot of kind of events, so I've seen those posted a lot, and people are attending those events. It's about sharing information and taking away that kind of, oh, I'm just going to ignore it for now and hope it goes away. I think it's that facing it up front. So
I guess for sort of small businesses perhaps that are coming into the regime in April 2019, if they don't have an accountant, they haven't had an accountant communicating to them when HMRC's letters about the regime, which are due to be going out this week, land on their doormats, that might be quite intimidating.
Yes, I think it's one of those things. If you're, you get that kind of letter, you might start doing your research. You might start looking into it. It might be one of those things that actually triggers people to consider getting an accountant. So it might have. I know it seems quite scary for a lot of people, but it might have a lot of positive benefits. It might make those people that have been a bit reticent or kind of stuck in their ways, they like managing it themselves, consider something like making an appointment, going to speak to somebody, where they might actually realise that there are systems and other businesses like accountants that can make your life easier. So, I'm sure there's a positive in there.
No, sure, absolutely. Michaela, obviously I just mentioned the letters that are going out to, I think, 20,000 businesses or so that are due to hit doormats today.
That's right.
Are you gearing up for a bit of a rush on the phones?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I've said generally I'm finding that I'm speaking to other accountants, and also we work very closely with NatWest, with their business growth enablers, and what they're saying is that they're finding some accountants are not grasping, Making Tax Digital. They're not getting the bull by the horns. They're not making preparations, and a lot of accountants are sort of saying, well, I'll leave it until after January. I'm going to get my busy tax return season out of the way. When I have that little lull in February, that's when I'm going to pick it up. But the problem is that's probably when it's going to be too late. And unfortunately, whereas my practice is ready and we're geared up for it, those 20,000 letters that go out, if any one of those people contact us, we can tell them exactly what the next steps are. And that's the problem. And I think accountants need to get on board with this. It's not going to go away. They're not going to postpone it again. They're not going to change it. It's happening. So you need to get on, sign up for an agent services access gateway. You need to get your clients ready, and you need to understand what your next steps are.
Goodness. Yeah, thank you, Michaela. We can we don't need to go any further. We can just end it now. But well, we've still got a little bit of time left, so let's take a look at the pilot process. So this obviously is a key element of sort of kicking the tyres on the Making Tax Digital wheel, if that's not too terrible a metaphor. But
more than one tyre on a wheel.
There we are. Yeah, goodness. So the private pilot for the simplest of businesses has been open since April 2018, and from last month was expanded to 500,000 businesses. So have you had a look at the pilot process, Michaela?
I have looked at it. I haven't been successful in signing any of my clients up. Unfortunately, the clients that I believe fit the criteria, we were actually getting messages to say to come back April 2019. So that obviously needs further investigation. Having said that, I do have other clients who I possibly would want to put them into the pilot, but because they're currently on monthly VAT submissions, as Emily said, you know, once they are in MTD, they have to stay in MTD. So that is a careful consideration between us and the client. So both sides need to understand exactly what that is going to entail.
Interesting. Yeah, there is information on the slides. I've included a few links to guidance on the pilot that was released last month, so how businesses can sign up, how agents and their clients can sign up, and a big old list of all the approved software suppliers and those who are currently working with HMRC on the approval process. We will send out this slide deck with a link to the on-demand version of this webcast as well, so don't worry, you will be able to have a look at those, or they're on gov.uk. Emily, obviously Free Agent have been working with HMRC on the pilot progress. Can you just tell us about a few sort of successes and potential snags you've encountered there?
Certainly, Tom. Well, as far as successes go, we have had a live submission made through Free Agent as part of the pilot, which we're very proud of. We have had a couple of accountants being able to authorise their dashboards, their practice dashboards that they use to manage all their clients, to talk to the MTD portal, and so we have got that end-to-end process for the accountant that lets them hook Free Agent up to their agent services account and file a VAT return for their client through MTD. And we've been able to make enough of Free Agent systems talk to enough of HMRC's APIs to make that happen, so that's obviously really good news. The snags, I would say, from our perspective, apart from what Michaela mentioned about not all clients fitting the criteria, because of course a lot of businesses who use Free Agent will, for example, use the VAT flat rate scheme, and they're not currently eligible to go through the pilot, so that restricts the number of businesses we can work with to a certain extent. The other is, sort of from a software development point of view, the very agile nature of the development process for MTD has been a bit of a challenge on the product and compliance side, because we know what the broad end goal is, all VAT returns being filed through MTD rather than through the government gateway, but what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? How do you actually write that in terms of lines of code that power a software system? That's been the difficult part with it being agile, because on the one hand, yes, you can easily adapt, or more easily adapt, if things don't work as you expected. On the other hand, it can be harder to build if you don't sort of know each step of the process. And from an accounting point of view, obviously as accountants, we love a nice clear process. Yes, we love to be told you need to do this and then this and then this and then this and so on, and make sure it works. And when you don't know what the second half of that set of steps is, it gets much harder.
Yeah, just to back up on that term, agile. Obviously, this is a sort of IT term, isn't it?
It is.
That
Yes,
you know,
it is.
Perhaps Michaela, from your sort of background, are you able to talk us through agile development?
I'm not really sure.
No, that's,
sorry.
That's fine. Sorry to spring that on
No,
you.
it's fine. It's fine. It's a long time since I did my MSc in computing.
Goodness. But yeah, I think from my journo understanding, it's a sort of, rather than sort of releasing one great big sort of software release,
right.
it's a sort of build up.
It's
slowly.
steps.
An iterative process, as it were.
Iterative is a very good way of putting it, Tom. It's to sort of take many small steps rather than fewer larger ones. Would you agree?
We find that with Free Agent generally, Free Agent is very responsive, and where you're talking about the agile model is obviously when we work with Free Agent and we say, oh, actually we just need to do this, or if this was presented in a slightly better way, or we can't find this particular part, or our clients are, you know, finding this bit difficult, and the support team there are very, very responsive at passing that on to technical, and changes do happen quite rapidly, probably more so than other software providers, I think.
Yeah. And Harry, from a sort of small business point of view, in terms of pilots, is that something you would be interested in participating?
Yeah, definitely. I think as an organisation, we like to make sure that we are adapting with change. It's not something that we're resistant to, and I think anything that gives you the opportunity to try something and work with it before you've got the end goal definitely has to be something that makes what is for our business probably quite a stressful experience when you're going through those big changes with finance, which isn't what we do, and so I think being able to take part in something like that would be a positive process, and I think it would probably be a good idea for any small business that gets that opportunity to work towards something, because you're going to have your hand held a little bit, and I think that there's always something nice about having your hand held in something that you don't necessarily leap for joy at the chance of.
Sure, thank you. So from the pilot process to a few experiences from early adopters, so firms who've been preparing their firms for MTD for VAT. So you mentioned earlier about not wanting to sort of systemize things too much, so perhaps you haven't got a sort of a step-by-step sort of checklist process for each client about how you've prepared them, but can you talk us through a few of the things you've done to get your clients ready?
Well, I'd honestly say that I've not had a single client come to me and ask me to explain making tax digital. It's not something which is on the client's radar. You know, as Harry says, her business is not about finance. Her business is something completely different on a day-to-day basis. A lot of clients have the attitude that my accountant will sort it out. Fair enough, that is our job. So what we tend to be doing is identifying those clients who need to change, those clients who are going to be reluctant to change, and then working with them side by side to put something together that suits them. We've got a client at the moment who does not want to deal with technology, does not want to get involved with that side of it. They have a very manual job on a day-to-day basis. What they want us to do is run the software for them. So we are going to provide their compliance for making tax digital, and they don't have to worry about it. And that's what a client really wants. They just don't want any concerns or any worries. Emily, obviously free agent work with a large number of accountants across the country. What sorts of things have they been doing to sort of get their clients ready?
That's an interesting point, Tom, because I think that what we find is that there's often two different kinds of practices that we work with. There's a practice that will say, OK, all my clients must use either free agent or another system, and they just narrow it down to 2 or 3 systems. And that being so, it's potentially easier to prepare them for making tax digital because they're already using digital systems. So all it's going to be a case of is every 18 months you reauthorise the system to file through making tax digital, and that's all there is to it. But other practices we find have an approach that they let the client choose how they want to keep their records. They let the client choose, do they want to use free agent? Do they want to use another digital package? Do they want to use a spreadsheet? Do they want to use a handwritten cash book? Whichever works best for the client, because as Michaela says, there's some clients who really don't want to do their own books digitally. So in that case, could it be argued that the practice has a harder job ahead to prepare for making tax digital? Because in that case, you've got to think about, OK, for the clients who use spreadsheets, we need to find bridging software. For the clients who keep a handwritten cash book, we need to get them to give the records to us instead. It's potentially more work for the accountant in that situation, but equally, if it enables you to provide a tailored service to your client, if it enables you to provide what clients want, then that's a positive.
Yeah. Harry, where would you fit in? Would you be on the more sort of tailored side of things? I guess you're with Michaela, so that's.
I mean, I think for us, when we started as a business, like I've said, you start and it depends on where you're at. We were encouraged from day one to consider free agent and had a very tailored service. So to start with, we were set up, so it was kind of done for us, and then it was done alongside us, and then kind of once I'd earned my badge, I was allowed to go off it and inevitably come back when I'd made a mistake or an error or I didn't understand what was going on. But also that in itself is really good for small business owners because it allows you to feel upskilled. And you do feel a sense of achievement, and you know, Michaela often says now she gets it, or she's listened, and I'm able to explain stuff to other people. You know, Michaela's overheard me explain to somebody else about how something works on free agent, and then they know they've done their job well.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and it can only help your business both in terms of sort of using the systems well and sort of
it saves
monitoring.
time, money, and effort, and I think that's what you want to achieve as a small business. You don't have much spare time. You may not have masses of spare money, and even if you do, you probably don't want to waste it. And it takes that effort down. It's far less stressful, you know, than going back to kind of our first initial thing was probably petty cash with a book and receipts, and can't find it, and my head's exploding, and the phones go in and emails go in, and yeah, it's just all round easier.
Yeah. Michaela, in terms of your staff, was it sort of an effort to get sort of staff buy-in? Did you organise sort of specific training for them on either Making Tax Digital or the tools that you would be sort of using? How did you generate the sort of buy-in needed?
I think we've had a long-standing relationship with Free Agent anyway. One of our clients must have used them from the beginning of time, and so we'd always seen how well it works. So all of our staff have always been familiar with it as a software tool. There are other software tools available as well. They all work on a very similar way, but what we like about Free Agent is the fact that it's got a traffic light system, so you can easily see green, amber, red for different things. Very easy overview, so you understand how your business is performing. So staff can immediately see that there's a tool there that's an easy sell to clients. As I say, we went to Accountex. We were very inspired by what we heard when we went to the talks there. Since then, we've undertaken various sort of training seminars with our regulators. Free Agent ran a live webinar, which our staff were involved with as well. It's just getting as much information as possible, really. There are some YouTube videos as well available from HMRC. They are pretty good because they do screenshot exactly what you need to do as an accountant. There is also promotional material there so that you can explain things to your clients. And I know that Accounting Web have recently done a nice little leaflet as well with KPM, telling accountants the step-by-step guide as to what they should do with their clients. So there's a lot of information out there. It's picking and choosing what's right for you in your practice.
Yeah, we were discussing it earlier about the sort of slight frustration accountants were feeling about there not being a sort of single point of truth. They're having to sort of pick in bits and pieces of information from different sources.
Yeah, it's very complicated, I think, at the moment. And the HMRC website, the pages that they have there for Making Tax Digital are slightly confusing, in my opinion. And I do tend to find that I go around in a bit of a loop. So, it's probably better to actually go to, a software provider and look at the pages that they've got, or to look at Accounting Web, and then secondary, go back to HMRC, and then you know what you're looking for on that website.
Yeah.
Because yes, we certainly have put together some guides for accountants to try and help them move their clients across to MTD and to work with MTD. So I think I made those available to you, Tom, didn't I? Are you able to share them?
Yeah, we will certainly share them as part of the post-event email.
Thank you.
It were. I'm quite interested, Michaela, in terms of the sort of, you mentioned you'd recently been to a CIOT event, and obviously that would probably be relatively technical. How much information, how do you decide what information to share with a client on this? Because obviously you don't want to bombard them with information, or perhaps you might decide that actually having all the information is best for them. How do you make that decision?
I think realistically, the client needs to spend their time focused on their business. You know, that it's our job to work out what they actually need to know. Realistically, right now, what they need to know is that they need to sign up with HMRC. They need to ensure that they've got digital record keeping, and they need to be able to file to that HMRC gateway. So, and those are the two things that we can help them with. And it's very much hand-holding and educating and showing them. Again, as I say, if their level of skill is not such that they want to, you know, understand the technology at great depth, then they need to speak to their accountant. They need to see what level of service their accountant is willing to provide. But I still think that by using software tools such as Free Agent, it's going to save them a lot of money. So then that's going to obviously free up their time. It's going to free up their accountant's time. We can add more value to their business that way. We can actually start looking at things and saying, do you realise that this product doesn't actually make any money, but this product that you actually sell for less, the profit margin is much higher. You know, let's start looking at what we can do to make your business work more efficiently for you, rather than sitting there typing up bank statements.
Exactly, because it's my firm belief that you can't do those add value services if you don't have an accurate set of books to start with. If you've got a set of books that have a lot of mistakes in them, then you're making decisions based on incorrect information, and that could lead to ultimately the business going out of business. I think that that's where something like Free Agent, as you say, can really add value, because it means that the client can prepare a nice accurate set of books, and then you as an accountant can be saying, well, let's change this decision, let's look at that. Are your bank charges a bit high? Do you need to change your bank account? That kind of thing.
No, I agree, Emily, because funnily enough, we do get clients who maintain their records on Excel, and when they send them to us, we then discover that there are inaccuracies.
Oh, yes.
And so we have to then ask them for the bank statement download. They don't know exactly why we want that. We then explain, and then they become aware of it. Whereas with Free Agent, because of that direct link to the bank account, you know you're dealing with the primary record. And you can see, again, because of the colour coding system, there's actually a purple colour which is used for anything manual, so you can see if something has actually been adjusted and shouldn't have been. So it's a very, very good tool from our perspective.
Exactly. Great. You say the colour coding system. I missed a trick by not wearing amber, didn't I?
Right, before we move on to the next part, we've had a few questions in, so thank you very much. You can ask them in the chat box, either to the side or below the window. So this one's coming from someone called Lee. If a client uses a spreadsheet, am I able to re-input this into a cloud software system, then file through MTD this way, or will I need to use bridging software?
Well, my understanding is that, yes, you could take the records from the spreadsheet and input them into digital software and file them. What the revenue care about is that the records are kept digitally and filed digitally. Would you agree with that, Nicola?
Yeah, I think so, because I've got some clients that I've recently taken on whereby they use a very old-fashioned way of bookkeeping where they record all their ins, they record all their outs, and they reconcile. It's obviously come from the bank statement, and I can reconcile it back to the bank statement. So I have uploaded those entries into Free Agent, which has then sort of recreated the bank statement and then allowed me to create whatever I need.
Okay, we're going to stick on bridging software again. If clients are using spreadsheets to feed into bridging software, is there a specific layout for the spreadsheets? I think it sort of depends on the bridging software, doesn't it?
It would,
depend on the API.
Yes, it would. It would depend on the bridging software, and it would depend on what data the bridging software needs to pull out, because presumably the bridging software would need to be programmed to pull certain data from certain places. So presumably it would be a matter of taking the bridging software and saying, okay, well, where do I get the information for box 1 of the VAT return, for example, from in this spreadsheet?
Yeah, I recently wrote a piece on the sort of big 4 accounting firms' preparations, their bridging software, and the people I spoke to comprehensively sort of were talking about bridging software is very much a short-term solution, you know, of getting their clients, and admittedly they're very complex clients, very different to sort of small business owners, but they were preparing for the sort of perhaps the more transactional nature of MTD coming down the line. I think, Michaela, you'd mentioned something very interesting around sort of transactions from 2023. I think you'd.
Yes. Well, at the seminar that I attended yesterday, which was a joint ICAEW and CIOT event on making tax digital, we were actually told that by 2023, because obviously we've got blockchain sort of slowly being adopted as well alongside all of this, that the government actually are going to be looking at e-invoicing. So effectively they would like to see electronic copies of all invoices back and forth. So obviously that at the moment seems quite scary and daunting. We're actually in our practice doing a lot of work on blockchain already. We've started educating ourselves, attending various events and trying to understand how it will be implemented. Thomson Reuters did a recent article, Accountant of Tomorrow, definitely worth looking up, and it's explaining about how the accountancy profession is changing and how we are going to have to understand technology more, because we are going to have to advise more on software rather than other aspects.
Exactly. Well, this is the point that Harry made, that as a small business owner, you've not really got time or inclination to think about, well, should I choose this piece of software or that piece of software, or you want to be able to go to your accountant and say, Michaela, please recommend a piece of software that's going to be good for my business.
Well, I think one of the things that you know is good to recognise as a business owner are your strengths and weaknesses. And you know, I don't have an accountancy practice, so why would I think that my knowledge on what is going to be good for me on that level is going to be better than going to an expert? So I think if you can always recognise what other companies can do for you and how they can advise you, it just makes life simpler. And I think that's, you know, every business has its difficulties and stresses in managing, and if you can find ways of making your life easier, then why not choose them? So for us, that's something we've looked at. You know, why have staff giving you a Word document that inevitably somebody doesn't save the template and writes over and all those stresses which, you know, make your head explode on a daily basis, when you can have a system where actually you're then upskilling staff so they feel better about themselves because they've learned something new. So all of our staff upload their own expenses, their mileage onto Free Agent. They do it themselves, you know, and for some staff members that is an achievement, doing something differently. It makes, and it's allowing people to take control of stuff. So Free Agent allows me to take control of my finances. I manage it, but I have a bit of support, and Michaela's and all the staff at Sterling Rees do the things that I need, adding value to my business, rather than sifting through carrier bags of receipts.
We'll stay on this point. The next section talking about the sort of small business view of making tax digital, and do you, in terms of communication, I think we'd mentioned it earlier, was the first you'd heard about making tax digital from Michaela and Sterling Rees?
Most definitely. I think it's one of those things when, you know, as an organisation and as an individual, I do try to learn more about things that impact on my business. So I would probably have scaled my financial abilities as, you know, I've got a GCSE in maths, great, happy days. But anything above that wasn't something I was interested in. Don't like numbers, hated Excel. I think it took Michaela a year to get me to go, oh, I could do something like I wanted to. I never wanted to. And I think you slowly learn to develop things that make you feel kind of better about what you do. So I think it is something that is really important as a business, to learn to be open to those opportunities, to look at things and ways of adapting, moving with the times.
And I guess in terms of the communication piece, there's a sort of two-pronged approach that a lot of accountants I speak to have. Either there's the carrot of efficiency benefits, saving time and money, etc., or the stick in terms of the nasty letters and potential penalties that could sort of come through.
I think, we've been fortunate, our business has been fortunate because we've had, excellent accountancy support. So it's always, we've been using it since pretty much day one. So I guess we've always used that kind of stuff and motivated ourselves in a technological way. But, Sterling Reef do send the information out. They are being very proactive, arranging events for their clients to go to and other people. Let's get the information out there. Let's get people up to date, because it is going to be stressful for some people. I would find it stressful if I was completely paperless, as probably maybe I thought I'd be doing when I first opened a business, and then somebody saying, making tax, digital, not sure the terms are the best for some people, but it's kind of one of those things that maybe you would go about. Whereas if you can go to an event that's been organised, that's free to go to, and somebody is sitting there and using language that actually you can understand, and it's portrayed in that way, and the sooner you know about it, the better. And I think it's like a lot of things in life that maybe if you don't have enough advance warning, then it becomes stressful, and if you can take a kind of slower walk uphill, then it's going to be more achievable and pleasant on the way.
Yeah, rather than the scramble up the mountainside.
The last minute trying to run up a hill.
No, sure, absolutely. Michaela, you'd mentioned about the sort of approaches you're taking around your clients and making tax digital, sort of taking a tailored approach, looking at what they do, etc. In terms of that, how do you choose that? Is it just based on the personality? Is it based on the sector they're in? Is it sort of a mixture of both?
I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I mean, we're sort of very we work very closely with all of our clients. We try and know when their birthdays are, and if they've been on holiday recently, if they've had a new baby. We really do. They're not numbers to us. They are people, and we care about them, and we care about their businesses as well. So with each individual, we will sit down, the team members who work with that person, because there is predominantly one person. There may be two or three, but predominantly one person who really deals with the finances behind most of the businesses. And we'll think about them, and we'll say, well, what is their skill base like? What is their attitude to change like? What is going to suit them best? How do we approach this with them? And we actually develop something specifically for them. I think you've got to do it like that, because people don't like to be treated like numbers. They don't want to be told what to do. They want to be part of that process, part of the decision making. This is the problem, but don't worry about the problem, because we're going to work together and we're going to fix it. And then it's a case of saying, right, what would you like to do? These are your choices. We'll support you, but you need to understand what your choices are. So obviously, there is the digitisation of receipts, possibly. There is, working on an Excel spreadsheet. There is free agent. There are all of these alternatives. We're not going to force you into something that you're not comfortable with. But obviously, my preference would always be to use software like Free Agent, because of that audit trail. It's, as you said, Emily, accountants like things to be very clear, and that's what Free Agent does for you. And with some clients, I'll be honest, I will run Free Agent in the background, knowing that they are going to get to the point where they're willing and ready to accept it. And that's something that's happened with one of my clients recently. And I've been running it slowly in the background. He's been giving me his data. I pop it in. And then it's a case of, oh, look at this tool. Oh, I've set it up for you. Oh, do you want to log in? Okay, let's just have a look at that. And it's happening. So all he has to do is just jump on board and come for the ride. It's easy then.
But I guess there will always be those clients who won't, no matter what you do. I remember, because before I joined Free Agent, I had a very small practice of my own. One of my clients was a doctor of art history, and he said, there is no way I am ever going to do my books. No matter what you offer me, I'm just not going to do them. I'm going to get behind, and I'm going to file late, and I'm going to get penalties. And I said to him, David, not on my watch, you're not. You give me the book, you give me your papers and then I will do the books for you. And I never brought him round to showing any interest in his books or record keeping at all. He just liked to see the figures at the end of the year, sign the tax return and forget about it.
I suppose if you've got a client like that, the question for me would be do they have online banking? And the way you've described no, you probably didn't. But if they do, if they are just willing to take that one step and link Free Agent or their or a software package to that bank account, as long as there's that feed, we can carry on doing the work in the background. And that's where I would push people.
That's very true. This is, of course, 10 years ago. Yes. So, yes, that is very true.
Interesting. So, obviously, there are a number of sort of frequently asked questions that pop up around making tax digital from accountants and small organisations. So, I guess one of the things I've encountered is the sort of, I haven't started preparing yet. Is it too late, Michaela?
Well, I think there's two levels of preparation. There's preparing as the accountant, so you need to get online, you need to sign up for your agent services account. You know, that has to be done, otherwise you can't take any next steps. The other thing is the clients need to be getting ready. So you know, maybe it's not a case of talking to them about making tax digital, but maybe it's a case of just getting them thinking about how they're going to keep their records, and for you to ensure that those records are going to fit in time, in due course, when they need to, and then bringing those two things together. I wouldn't say it's too late because, as I said, I mean, the clients that I wanted to put in the pilot scheme are being told to come back on the 1st of April. So let's hope on the 1st of April there aren't 3 million other people trying to sign up as well.
Interesting, yeah.
But obviously there is a 3-month window there, so hopefully we'll find that it will be staggered, and that HMRC will offer some support to us as accountants to try and get everybody on board.
Yeah, I guess that's a really good point. I guess it's worth sort of mentioning that although, you know, the regime begins in April, your first VAT filing will be what, sort of August, something like that.
It depends on when your VAT quarter is going to end after the 1st of April, but yes.
August is the earliest, of course, isn't it, that you'd have to file a return through Making Tax Digital if you're not going to take part in the pilot, because it would be 1st of April to the end of June, file by 7th of August.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. The second question that gets sort of frequently asked is around the penalties regime for making tax digital. Emily, what's your understanding of this?
My understanding is that it's not yet been finalised. It's not been set in stone how it's going to work. For the first year, I understand HMRC have said there won't be any penalties because they want to make it a soft landing. After that, I understand it's going to be a point system, kind of like getting points on your driving licence. Late returns or presumably late or incorrect payments would incur penalty points, and then once you've got a certain number of penalty points, then you get a fine. And I think they've said as well that after, if I can't remember whether it's 6 months or a year off the top of my head, but in a certain time frame the points will start to drop off, so that if you file on time for, say, a year, then your slate gets wiped clean. But I don't think they're going down the same route as the self-assessment tax return yet, where even a minute late and you get fined £100. I don't think they're going down that route yet.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily.
Sorry?
I think we've kind of answered the third question that I was going to ask around clients refusing to move from paper-based records. Obviously, it's been asked a couple of times in a couple of different ways on the site. Some accountants have been more extreme than others. I was like, oh, just sack them, you know. Whereas others have gone for a more gentle approach to sort of phase them in. And I think, you know, Michaela has talked about sort of running programs in the background and things like that. That sounded a good solution.
Because, sorry to jump to that in, Tom, because I think one of the points that was made on one of the HMRC information papers about making tax digital is that keeping your records digitally doesn't mean that you personally have to do the record keeping, and equally I don't think it means that you have to do them in real time. Obviously it's most efficient if you can, the more real time you can do them, but business owners have got a lot of other things to do. And also if you're opting for the route where you give your books to your accountant to do, I think that the revenue have said, well, look, that's perfectly okay. You can still give your records to your accountant or bookkeeper once a quarter. So long as the records are prepared digitally and filed digitally, they're happy. That's my understanding.
Yeah. So the final question around making tax digital for income tax, corporate taxes, etc. What do we know about that?
2020 at
Yes.
least is what we know. At least 2020 is what they've said. And obviously we don't know what will happen with MTD for VAT as it beds in. We don't know how things will change with the one word nobody said today, Brexit. We don't know how things will change with that. So at least 2020 is all we know for now.
Great, thank you. So we've answered some frequently asked questions, but we've got plenty of questions that have flooded in on the iPad, so thank you very much. We've still got a few minutes, so if you want to get in any under the wire, then you know, it's one of those things that you'll be able to get in via the chat box either below the video or to the side of it, depending on your browser. Louise H asks, I have a second-hand car dealer on the margin scheme, a mix of margin and full VAT, but I can't find any reasonably priced software to deal with this. What should I do?
This came up actually as a query yesterday, and the head of the tax technical team couldn't answer it. Unfortunately, I think in that particular case at the moment, unless there's anything that you're aware of, Emily, I don't think we know the answer.
No, we don't. This came up in discussion at a seminar with HMRC and quite a lot of other professionals and professional bodies, and Rebecca Bennyworth didn't know of any software that could do that. And yes, I think if Rebecca doesn't know of any, the answer is probably there isn't any yet.
No.
So it would be a case of you use Free Agent or whatever software as far as you can, and then you post journals for the margins.
I think that was the advice that was given yesterday, is to make the amendments within the digital software itself. But that's all there is at the moment.
Goodness. Right, so wait and see, I guess.
Yes.
Goodness. Jane asks, well, she says, interesting to have a business owner on the panel. What has Harry's experience been with MTD, and is she part of the deferred group?
No, you're not, I don't think, are you, Harry? Because you're not registered for
No, we're not.
MTD,
2020.
Yes, exactly, yes.
So we've got, fortunately, a little bit more time, but that doesn't mean that we're going to take the approach of, oh, we'll just park it there. I think we're definitely taking the approach of, let's continue to do what we do now, which is doing all those, doing everything as much as possible digitally. As an organisation, we have to use a lot of different digital things. You know, with our organisation, you know, we have a lot of staff, they work shift patterns, so we have an app for our shift pattern, we have an app for our diary, our calendar, and we're actually in the process with our accountant support, because one of the things that we, because Michaela's able to add value to our business rather than sitting there and going through my receipts, one of the things we kind of looked at is, well, what's actually making your life hard work? So the finance isn't really hard work now because we use the software. One of the things that makes our hard work is our recording systems. We do a lot of recording. We use a lot of paperwork, which is really hard work because you use things like Word to create documents. There's so much human error, you know, conflicted copies on documents, files go in, you know, again, linking back to what Michaela said about people with different skill sets. Our staff are fantastic, but they've all got varying levels of tech ability, which means one person finds it really easy to use Word documents and not accidentally right-click in a folder and delete something. Somebody else does it all the time. So I think one of the things that we're also doing now with our accountant's advice is looking at getting our own database built. Again, taking that step towards accepting we are moving in a digital age, whether we like it or not. And I like my pen and paper. I like a book over a Kindle. But, you know, there's certain aspects that you're not going to change about me. I like a book, but I do accept that as an organisation, you know, you need to start moving that way. Basically, my advice is to anybody, you know, save yourself the time and effort, money, you know. Have a bit more time in your evening rather than sitting there with your receipts.
And I suppose that you're moving perhaps away from the pen and paper as being the sort of day-to-day tools to more sort of ad hoc, creative, ideas-based stuff, rather than just slinging it out the window. You know, it's used for sort of more specific tasks.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. Great. So we've had a question from Purple, who asks, if I'm just filing VAT returns on a client's behalf via their MTD compliance software, do I still need an agent services account?
Yes, you do, because it's through the agent services account that HMRC know that those clients belong to you. So therefore, yes, you do need the agent services account in order to make Making Tax Digital work for your practice. Am I right?
My advice would always be that if you are filing on behalf of a client, you should always file using an agent portal. You shouldn't be using the client's login details. The problem that you've got there is that if unfortunately you make an error, and we do all make mistakes from time to time, you know, if it's been shown that it's been filed via the client isn't going to be able to appeal.
Okay.
That's interesting. And of course then correcting that error gets harder if you have to ring the revenue, especially if you've not got the 64.8 in place. Do you ring the revenue and lie and pretend you're the client?
Exactly.
And
it's
obviously
a whole
for
can of worms.
for either of us, if the client happened to be a man, we'd be sunk.
Just put on a deep voice. Hello, yes. So another question that's literally just come in from GT Freelance, who asks, I'm a freelance bookkeeper. I have a partial exemption client who uses spreadsheets. My software is an old database based on Omnis. I'm reluctant to buy new software until I know it will be suitable for the next 10 years. What would you say to them?
What I'd say to them is that unfortunately Free Agent doesn't support partial exemption at the moment. It's certainly something that we've explored. We've explored quite a lot of areas in the whole MTD sphere to make sure that we can give as many people as much help as possible. But my understanding is that, again, going back to that seminar I went to with Rebecca Bennyworth, partial exemption is another another calculation mechanism that I'm not aware of any software that does actually support it without the requirement for journal entries. So in terms of sort of if you want something that's going to be suitable for the next 10 years, you might have a little bit more of a wait to get that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd agree.
All right. Rattling through, we've literally got 5 minutes to go, so rattle through a couple more questions. Sue asks, how confident can we be that VAT-registered clients who are below the 85k threshold will still have access to their current portal? I guess that's something we can't really...
They haven't said they're going to take it away, put it that way. I mean, I've heard sort of the odd rumour that the government wants ultimately to have everybody on MTD if they're registered for VAT, but there's certainly been no end date set to shut the government gateway down, not that I've heard of anyhow.
I mean, the next plan, obviously, is to bring income tax in. I mean, that's what they're, you know, I mean, it's in now, but what I mean is to actually get people using it. I don't see where they would get to the point where they would actually shut the portals completely.
No.
I think we're a long way off that.
I'd agree that.
There's an income tax pilot sort of chuntering away in the background, isn't there? But it's been a bit sort of overshadowed.
Again, I think you've got to be a little bit cautious, because once you're in the pilot, you're actually in MTD. You can't just say, oh, I've signed up to the pilot, don't fancy doing that anymore.
No.
We were told it took about 6 weeks to get somebody out of the system, and that doesn't seem that long, possibly. But if you're going back and forth, that 6 weeks you could be spending chargeable to another client.
Exactly.
Alison asks, I have managed to set up my new agent service account. However, I can't seem to find the link to allow the mapping process.
It's not a link. You have to sign back in. You have to link your current government gateway ID or IDs to that account, so you're effectively pulling across the authorisations. You won't be able to see the clients within that. Then you have to log back in there's another link where you have to log back in, and then you put the client's details and your details. Then the client will get an email to ask whether they're going to authorise this process to continue. So that's sort of in a nutshell, sort of a short.
That sounds complicated.
It is complicated. I think HMRC have set the bar pretty high for accountants on this one. We are being sort of left to find our own way through. The best thing that I can advise is to have a look at the HMRC YouTube videos, because they do screenshot every step of the process.
Brilliant. I think that's about all we've got time for on the questions, so apologies, there are a few I've had to miss out, I'm afraid, but we will cover those in a wrap-up afterwards. So just a final point from all of you, either as a sort of accountant or small business owner, if there's one thing that people can take away from this session, what would you say?
My message to accountants would be, don't delay, don't wait until February, start looking at it now, start signing up, start assessing your clients, talk to your clients, even if you're just telling your clients that you will be dealing with it in February, if that's what you have to do, but start talking to them. Don't spring it on them in February, March, because you'll meet a lot of resistance.
Lovely. Emily?
I think my point would be that if you are or would like to be an accountant working with Free Agent, then, as I said, we have got 2 accountancy practices who've hooked up to the MTD pilot through the dashboard. If you would like to be part of that too, then please talk to your account manager at Free Agent, because we offer that. We also offer like mini consultations to help you get your practice ready for Making Tax Digital. So however we can help you, please ask.
Lovely. And Harry?
I guess my advice is to try and embrace the process a little bit more. So maybe have a little bit of a reflection about, if you don't have an accountant, what an accountant could bring to you. Yes, you might not want to spend out on certain things that you think you can do, but actually, accountancy, I've learned, is more than just somebody that does your tax return and stops you getting a penalty. So take that approach to it, and if your accountant is somebody that just does your tax return and doesn't offer you any added value, then maybe again you need to think and look at going to that person and see it more as, does this accountancy practice work with who I am and what my business is?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Harry, Emily and Michaela, for joining us. Thank you very much for watching. We'll send out an on-demand version with the slides and the Free Agent resources, as I'd mentioned, and keep an eye on accountingweb.co.uk for more information on Making Tax Digital and everything else from the big wide world of accountancy. Thank you very much to Free Agent for supporting this webcast, and thank you for watching right to the end. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.